You got to finish your hits. And again, it's not, as we've said a number of times, it's not Cronwalling Nikita Kucherov as he comes up the boards, or Scott Steven Stamkos as he crosses the blue line. It's just, can you finish your hit? That's all it is. Just finish your check. Maybe a few seconds late, whatever you have to do. And I think it's a good sign that the Bruins that's more in their DNA than it was last year.
Poke the Bear is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 219, presented by our friends over at Prize Picks. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Connor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing okay. How you doing?
Doing well, or doing great, I should say, as I always say, doing great. What's going on? You got anything affecting you?
Well, I'll be honest, Evan. I think I've maybe had a little bit of food poisoning the last couple of days, so my tummy's been in rough shape. Let me just I'll say that.
It's your tummy.
Yes, it's my tummy. So I've been in hell the last few days. I'm just getting over it. But what better way to ease myself back into the swing of things than watch the BU Terriers play in a Frozen Four game in about 15 minutes from now? So that will definitely make the intestinal fortitude a lot better moving forward. So
literally, we're recording less than an hour before puck drop in that first Frozen Four game. Do you think you know what you ate? Like, do you think you know what it was?
I have no idea. I don't want to besmirch any chains that I've been to in the last couple of days and throw them under the bus. So I don't know what exactly it was, but listen, man, I was fine on Tuesday. Maybe it's because the fact that I ran into you at the Garden. Maybe
that might have been
bad.
It.
You might have brought bad vibes to the Garden that day because that was all good. Then that night, went to bed, had some tea, listened to some white noise, and then all of a sudden yakking it up all night. Yeah. So I don't know what happened.
It must have been me. The Bruins lost 4-1. It wasn't close. It wasn't a good game. You got sick, so I just infected that joint. But what are you gonna do? Hope you feel better though. That is the worst.
You.
Like, that food poisoning sucks.
Yes. I don't recommend it.
Yeah, no. We're an anti-food poisoning podcast. We've always said that. But again, hopefully BU can pull out a dub for you, and then if it's BU BC, you'll be throwing up on Saturday. But for
regardless, that'd be totally fine. Yeah, that comes with the territory at that point. So I'll be a wreck. I'll be a wreck that day, Evan.
Yeah, I feel bad for like Belle Frazier, who has to cover them and be like sort of unbiased, but you're sitting there like nervous as hell. At least when I covered UMass winning the national championship, I did it from my house because it was COVID. So and it was also never a close game. So it was like, all right,
I still feel like it's better to cover it like when you're actually there, like writing a story or what have you, because you can like put up more like the focus on it. Whereas I think like so much more nerve wracking. I think if you're just watching it as a fan or an impartial party or anything like that, like that's when I feel like I'm a wreck. Like I was watching the BU main game in person at the Garden just as a fan, was a wreck. And BU kind of controlled that game for a good chunk of it. When you're there covering it, you're like there for the bean plot. You put the blinders on, you can, appreciate even like that BC team. They're pretty good. Like you appreciate just a good old fashioned hockey game. Two pretty good programs, one very good one, kind of all right. But when you're there, like as a fan, that's when the anxiety ratchets it up, I think.
Yeah, I can relate to that because when I was watching UMass in Denver in that first round, that was double OT. I'm sweating. I didn't move off the couch. Like I sat there, I was like, I got to sit in the same spot. And so I can relate to that. But as a student, I think it's tough because it's like, it's your time there, like we're alums now. It's, we want them to win. And we're always, you're always a BU Terrier. I'm always a UMass Minuteman. But when you're there as a student and your friends are there, I think it's just such a different kind of atmosphere, so to speak. It wasn't a great atmosphere? Tuesday night, second to last home game of the season. Took a little time to fill the place in. I saw some Red Sox people there who trickled in from Fenway. I know you walked from Fenway to TD Garden, which is fucking impressive. I mean, my God.
Let me tell you, it's not that bad of a walk. When you immediately leave and there's still like all Red Sox fans moseying on out, it's tough because you're just behind that long line of people leaving. Like when you go like those little side streets to get to Boylston, but once you're in Boylston, you're in the clear. It's like the marathon. You zip all the way through there, through the Common, cut up through Beacon Hill, down on Cambridge Street, bang, you're right there.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, I respect the hell.
That's probably why I got sick.
Red Sox fans.
Yeah.
But Bruins lose 4-1 to the Hurricanes. Not a great game by any means. But what I found interesting was after the game, the tone from Charlie McAvoy, Jim Montgomery was very much, it's one game. I think McAvoy said it after, we played them last week. We beat them. They played us this week. They beat us. That's kind of playoff hockey. That's why you have 7 games. And they kind of were not nonchalant about it, but very much, hey, it's, game 76 or whatever it is. Playoffs are around the corner. Meh. And I think, and you know what? Typically, I would disagree with them on that. But in this case, it is, they have been playing well. They were kind of due for a game like that. If you play a team like the Hurricanes a lot, they're so structured. They play so well. That stuff's going to happen. I think there's one area that is an issue. We'll get to that in a second. But what did you think of the game as a whole?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely disappointing in the context of just how well this team's been playing. You hope they can kind of keep that momentum going. But as McAvoy said, that's kind of like the tenor of a best of 7 series, right? Where it feels like there's one game your team does really well and you think you have the formula all mapped out, right, as to how to beat a team, and all of a sudden it changes with the next game. That's just what a 7-game series is just a switch of momentum and just how the way you're playing. And we've talked about this before, Evan, but it's kind of like the Florida series last year. For the first few games of that series, you view it and you're like, Bruins can handle these guys, right? Like, yeah, they're more physical, but the Bruins have ratcheted up that intensity. They played well. They're boxing.
I think I said the series was. I think I'd said the series was over after Game 4.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. It all, the history is written by the victors, right? So like that, how that series ends is the Bruins were manhandled and they couldn't do anything to stop them. And then you look at the way it started off, seemed like they were playing to their level. It's the same thing as, and again, both things can be true, right? Like you could say the Bruins were able to capitalize quite a bit against the Blues, but when they lose in Game 7, it's all about they couldn't get into inside ice and Jordan Binnington couldn't, you couldn't solve him, what have you. Like it all comes down to no one does a whataboutism or but when you lose a playoff series, right? Like there's no silver linings that you really should glean from that unless you're an 8 seed or a team you didn't expect to make the playoffs and you're just looking for positives. Like there really shouldn't be any silver linings if you lose a best of 7 series, especially if you're the Bruins where you have really high expectations. But as McAvoy said, though, like you go through the ups and downs. This seems like a perfect kind of microcosm of what that series could be, right? Where the Bruins come out of the gates hot, hold on for a win. Carolina, like any other good team, capitalizes and answers right back the next time they play them. So not really much of a surprise there in terms of how Carolina responded. But yeah, for the Bruins, it's still not good enough in terms of their own play, right? Like, again, I don't think you focus too much right now on who they're matching up against, more of how they're playing and whether it's special teams or the goaltending. Still a few kind of goals late in that third period when the game was still pretty close that maybe could have been the difference maker there as well. So, yeah, not good enough from the Bruins, but still not enough that I think it's a bad omen or anything for the playoff stat.
You mentioned special teams. I think of special teams, special plays, special players. But that's just me. You don't get that reference at all, do you?
No, absolutely not.
Oh, it's Sketch. Have you not heard of Sketch?
No.
Sketch. Oh God. Sketch is a Madden streamer. And he.
I know nothing about streamers, Evan.
Well, I don't watch the streams. I see the streams on like TikTok and stuff and the highlights. Sketch, you got to look into Sketch when we finish recording this. Sketch is mainstream now. Like a lot of sports teams are there are teams in the MLB that do his like things on the base paths. And I know the Frozen Four had a thing where they were like asking players about it, and the Providence Bruins did something on it. He's just a Madden streamer who has all these catchphrases and he's really funny and he's kind of a character and he's awesome. I've been like following him for like the last couple months and it's cool to see him go mainstream. So when you said special teams, I thought maybe you'd get it, but we'll turn you on to it. We'll turn you on to it. But one thing I thought that the Bruins did pretty well early in that game, they didn't continue it, but I liked it at the start, was they played with an edge. They were finishing every hit, clean and borderline. And I think when the playoffs do come around, which is, we're getting really close to it, that's I think one thing they're going to have to do, especially early in a game, the way that their lineup is set up, the kind of the style of play they have, and the way they're going to beat teams is you kind of have to punch teams in the mouth. Now you've got to do that over 60 minutes. You've got to make sure you don't slip on the details. But, early in the game, I did like that. That did fall off a bit as the game wore on. But early, I did like that they had that in their game, especially against a team like Carolina, where you're going to kind of have to do that. You can kind of knock some of those guys off their game. I enjoyed that. And I think that if, as I said, if they're going to have to, if they're going to, hold their own against a team like the Lightning in the first round, you got a guy like Kucherov, you got to finish your hits. And again, it's not, as we've said a number of times, it's not Cronwalling Nikita Kucherov as he comes up the boards, or, Scott Steven Stamkos as he crosses the blue line. It's just, can you finish your hit? That's all it is. Just finish your check, maybe a few seconds late, whatever you have to do. And I think it's a good sign that the Bruins that's more in their DNA than it was last year.
Yeah, no, as much as I think people view maybe some of the shortcomings of this team, and one that, people maybe it's just because of the fact they lost last year to again, probably the most physical team in the NHL, you'd probably say, in Florida last year, especially. They've kind of carried on that mantle again this year, but you're going to look bad in terms of, not being as physical against any team when you're playing up against Florida, right? Like, that's a tough, it's like going up against the 2010-11 Bruins, be like, team's not as tough as these guys. I'm like, I don't know there's many other teams that are as tough as those guys, the way they kind of play night in and night out. So, but I think one thing that, people view like this team, how tough they are, how equipped they are for playoff hockey, that's been viewed as like a fault or a potential flaw for this team. But you look at all these games, they're not just over this recent, 5 wins in six games. You look at like even earlier in the year when they played teams like Toronto in some of these bigger matchups, whether it's against a divisional opponent like Toronto, or against teams that are physical like Florida, Carolina's been a tough out for them, Nashville, they really have ratcheted up the physicality. So again, you can't do that all 82 regular season games. We all know that it's just unsustainable to play that way. But I think this team has shown that, they have guys that can step up and deliver those hits when needed and just add to the physicality that's required when you get to the playoffs. So again, it's not a set formula. It will help when I think you have a guy like Pat Maroon back in the lineup, which should be the case in a couple of days now. But as much people worry that this team's going to be just kind of manhandled or bullied around, they have guys that have shown a willingness to finish their hits and contribute to the team game necessary to go on a deep playoff run here.
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is so easy to play. I can make my Celtic picks and make my entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals and easy gameplay and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. Celtics and NBA fans, you can get in on Prize Picks in 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. On Prize Picks this week, I'm selecting Jason Tatum to dish out more than 5 assists and his teammate Jaylen Brown to have more than 22.5 points. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
So, Connor, we have some breaking news. Woo, woo, woo. A little bit of breaking news here, kind of Bruins related. Noah Hannafin signs an 8-year extension in Vegas, carries a $7.35 million average annual value. Pretty good. Pretty good for Vegas. I thought the team would pay a lot more for a guy like Hannafin. But Vegas gets him. Again, that takes the Bruins, obviously, out of the running for the free agency sweepstakes in the offseason. I won't have my my prep hockey guy in the locker room to talk to. What a shame. There it goes.
There goes that dream.
Yeah, it was really a big dream of mine. But Vegas, low key. St. Louis is catching up on them.
Yeah,
in the
Vegas
playoff.
low-key playing like ass for a couple of months.
Yeah, they have. And St. Louis was sort of dubbed out of it. And now what are they? 3 points back of Vegas?
I think so, yeah. Which
I'm pulling up the standings. I think
wouldn't that be a great Stanley Cup final rematch?
St. Louis and Boston.
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah, St. Louis 89 points, Vegas 92. Vegas has been not great of late. And again, they spent a lot on that team. They traded a lot away.
Pretty wild if they get Hurdle and Hanifin. Again, those guys are locked up long term now, so they'll be fine. But like them getting them, they still make the playoffs.
Bruce Cassidy's already worn thin on those guys.
Yeah, being too mean.
Yeah, be a little too tough on them. But anyways, with the Bruins, one thing that I think people were, and this has been a long-term thing with the Bruins, is the power play. Power play really didn't look great against Hurricanes. Hurricanes scored a shorthanded goal. The power play just kind of continues to be not great for this team. And, obviously everybody looks back at 2011 and goes, well, that power play sucked. But this team isn't scoring at the level that team did. I don't think. I forget the 2011 stats, but off the top of my head, they are not as potent offensively. So you do kind of need this power play to kick into gear. There's not a lot of time left. It just kind of feels like they're going to go into the playoffs with a just kind of a meh power play. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's been something that's been an issue throughout like the last couple of months, really. I mean, I think they're now 2 for 27 the last 9 games on the power play. And it's a lot of the same stuff we've seen earlier this year, right? Where it's way too much perimeter play, way too much stagnant puck movement. Montgomery earlier this week mentioned like the Coyle power play goal from what was it, the game on Saturday, where it was like Marchand attacks the front of the net and Coyle is there kind of at, grade A ice right in the low slot and is able to knock it home. Like, you're not seeing enough of them bringing the puck to the net, making those quick, passing plays that are leading to, quality chances. It's way too much stuff, passing up to McAvoy, and then it's a lot of perimeter play, and teams are well aware of where David Pastrnak is on the ice at all times. It's not to say that all these chances are ending with him firing off a one-timer into a guy's shin, what have you. Like, they're still trying to do things beyond just giving it to Pastrnak, but there's not enough, I think, involvement from the rest of the guys in terms of having that attacking mindset, and it's leading to just killing the clock for, a minute 30 of their 2 minutes, right? Like, you even notice on like the second power play unit, they've probably had better looks because they're taking more of an aggressive approach there. And again, it's not to say you got to rush in all 5 of you guys and lead to shorthanded chances, as was the case against Carolina. But you look at just where this team is and how much they've relied on the power play to be a consistent kind of conduit of offense. Like, if you're going up against Tampa Bay in the first round, and we know how dangerous Tampa Bay is, like, you're going to need to find ways to keep you afloat in some of these games. Like, again, the Bruins can beat the Lightning, but there's going to be a couple of these games where they're going to go on the power play and rip you up, and you got to do something to stay afloat. And the power play is your best chance of doing that. And right now, they're just not playing like a team that's confident in their 5-man unit to generate those chances. And I don't think they need to reinvent the wheel or anything, but it's all about, again, not focusing so much on the perimeter and getting more aggressive with the puck.
I agree. They're too predictable. It's a lot, as you said, it's a lot of passing around the perimeter. Pucks are not getting to the net. They're not handling pucks in high danger areas either. It's not like they're even kind of getting to those areas. It's just, teams kind of have them. And I think, as you said, when the playoffs come around and, you need to establish something that separates you. I mean, again, you think back to a lot of the Bruce Cassidy years, they were sort of a one-line team with Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak. But they could always kind of rely on offense from that power play. That power play was the difference maker that kept them alive in series. It won them series. And again, I think, goaltending is kind of their number one thing, and kind of keeping the score low, but you're going to need a power play goal here and there in the playoffs. And I think, you need guys like, a guy like McAvoy at the point. If you're going to let him continue to quarterback the power play, got to be less predictable. You can't know that he's just looking to pass to the top of the flank or just not enough movement. And I think that's sort of, you think back to the Torrey Krug days. Krug could get shots through really well. He moved well at the point. He could skate it down low, things like that. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that with McAvoy. I know we've talked about that about him this year quite a bit, but it just hasn't been there. And I think at some point they do have to figure that out. Maybe they should just eat some Factor meals, Connor. Maybe they should just freaking eat some Factor meals.
Get started on your New Year's resolutions with Factor, so you're ready for the new year. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from each week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons, you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolutions. No more wasting time in the kitchen. Not only does Factor offer fast, simple solutions when I'm too busy to cook, they also help me stay on top of my goals. With offerings like Protein Plus and Keto, I can stay on track. This is definitely going to come in handy for my New Year's goals. So head to factormeals.com/poke50 and use code POKE50 to get 50% off. That's code POKE50. Factor Meals, your go-to ready-to-eat meal delivery service. And now, let's get back to the show.
So Bruins are off all week. It's like we're doing this on Thursday. It's like where's the game? But I'm kind of glad they're not playing Thursday because I get to just watch the Frozen Four in peace, which is enjoyable. Next game is until Saturday. They're in Pittsburgh. The big news of that game is Pat Maroon is supposed to slot in. Now the question is, where does Pat Maroon fit? Justin Brazeau is out. I know for a long time after that Maroon trade we talked, can they be on the same line together? Unfortunately, that's not a problem they're going to encounter at the moment. But where do you see Pat Maroon fitting in?
Yeah, I think starting off, I'm going to put him on the third line. I think with Geeky and Frederick, just because one, I think JVR is just his production has unfortunately just plummeted over the last he has 1 point in the last month and no goals in the last 2 months, I think, right? So it's a tough break for JVR, who was so great to start the year, but right now, if you're the Bruins, and one, I wouldn't really want to change around that fourth line with Boquist, Beecher, and Lauko right now. Again, if Brazeau was in, I'd stick Brazeau there instead of Lauko and just keep that fourth line as is because they were great throughout their time together. So at that point, it's like, all right, do you move Lauko, which I think you do for Brazeau if he was healthy, and then it just becomes, I think, JVR Maroon, because I don't think you want to move out a guy like Boquist, who I think has shown his value, and especially a guy like Beecher just off of his faceoffs alone, but he's also, I think, done a good job in that fourth line role since coming back into the lineup. So I think it's between JVR and Maroon. And right now, I mean, again, we'll see how Maroon does these last couple of games. He's still 35 coming off back surgery, but I think you look at what he brings to maybe that line with Geeky and Frederick, in terms of the physicality, the ability to be another guy that can win board battles, win pucks, contribute to kind of the puck possession kind of play of that line. I think he actually could be a pretty good fit there.
So you'd have him you'd have Maroon, Geeky, Frederick. You'd put Boquist, Beecher, and Lauko. And then who would go up with Marchand and Coyle?
DeBrusk.
Oh, yes. Because lately it's been
they changed around the last couple. They brought and they weren't that great. Geeky, Marchand, and Coyle weren't that great on Tuesday. So I'm like, all right, that was fun. Let's switch it back.
Yeah. What's funny is I actually liked DeBrusk, Boquist, and Frederick. I thought that line was pretty good against Carolina.
It's some good speed. Yeah.
That is a speed line you can go back to. I agree with you on Van Riemsdyk, and it is sad because it's like there was a guy that you trusted. He looked really good for parts of the beginning of the year and the middle of the year. It's funny. I remember people, Carl Corzini, who's going to be rejoining for post-game shows during the playoffs, would say to me all year, you trade Van Riemsdyk, get something for him at the deadline, this and that. I remember being like, no, you need that veteran presence. Hindsight's 2020. Obviously Van Riemsdyk has been through some stuff, but just the other night with against Carolina with him, with Beecher and Lauko, just doesn't fit in down there. He's not a fourth line guy. Doesn't have the speed those two have. Just doesn't look himself. And I agree. I think Maroon brings you more. And it's unfortunate because one of the things I really wanted to see in the last couple weeks of the season was JVR kind of regain form. That hasn't happened yet. So it's unfortunate. I think Maroon brings you more. I think, whether it be in the dressing room, on the ice. And again, if the playoffs start tomorrow, and the first 2 games of the season, first 2 games of the series, the Bruins lose and there's no offense. Maybe you can bring Van Riemsdyk back in to kind of provide a jolt. But I agree with you. I think Maroon makes more sense in the lineup, especially in a bottom 6 role, than Van Riemsdyk does at this time. So here's the big question: who has the most pressure on the team going into the playoffs? On this team, who do you think? This this run really means everything to.
I mean, I think it's probably right now it's Jim Montgomery in terms of when you look at just his unfortunate role, I think, in last year's collapse, where it's either overthinking the goalie rotation or some lineup substitutions that did not work out well at all. Right? You look at like Game 6 of bringing in Clifton and Fulbert, and again, I understand the rationale, but like Clifton had like one of his worst games ever as a Bruin in that game. Like every decision they made, whether it was like second guessing things or it just seemed like everything was blew up in his face in that series. So, and again, it's not like it's going to be any easier this year, right? Like it's all right. Like last year, you drew criticism for going away from goalie rotation. Now your new criticism is, can you stick to this unconventional, unorthodox goalie rotation for an entire series, if not multiple series, depending on how far the Bruins go. So again, like I don't know if Jim Montgomery's on the hot seat or anything like that, but like if they can't get out of the first round again, and either the goalie rotation doesn't work or they change the script again, like there are going to be questions as to how this team is equipped for the playoffs moving forward, right? Because it does seem like a lot of the pressure is going to be on him to start this postseason.
It's undoubtedly Montgomery. There's no one in the lineup to me that has even a similar amount of pressure. There's no, like you can say like Jake DeBrusk with his next contract coming up. Like that's a good secondary one, but it's Montgomery. And I think it really comes down to the goaltending. How does he handle, does he do a rotation? Does he, change it game by game? Is it every game? Is it every couple games? Does he try to ride one? I think if they're out in the first round again, this is 2 straight years where you're first place in the Atlantic. I mean, last year they were like, the best team, regular season team ever. But this year you're still the best team in the Atlantic. You're one of the best teams in the league, and you're out in the first round for the second year in a row. If they were to lose to, whoever they play the first round, most likely Tampa. I would say he is on the hot seat after 2 straight first round exits, especially you have Marchand aging. You have this goalie rotation that has worked great the last 2 years that, either didn't use or mismanaged in the playoffs. So to me, like, yeah, it's definitely Jim Montgomery. And, the tough part, you also have to look at the roster, right? Like you have to look at this season and say, well, it was kind of looked at as sort of a transition year, not a bridge year, but, Bergeron and Krejci retire. You lose Bertuzzi, Orlov in the offseason. What are you going to look like? Credit to Jim Montgomery for, coaching well this season and getting them to first place. But playoffs matter around here. Playoffs matter more. I think whether it be management, the city would rather them be the second wild card team and go on a crazy deep playoff run than be first and just be out in the first round. So to me, it's definitely Jim Montgomery. Now, do I think he gets fired if they're out in the first round? Probably not. But I also didn't think Bruce Cassidy was getting fired a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
So like,
I don't think anyone.
I think it's hard to tell. No, I don't think anyone did. But even then, it was like, all right, like seats getting a little hot under Cassidy at the time. I don't think we knew how the team felt about him, because that was also when locker rooms were closed, or not closed, but like it was all Zoom. So there wasn't a lot of, you didn't get to see a lot of behind the scenes stuff. But I think with Montgomery, if they get swept or if they were up 3-0 and then lost, I think then there's probably a good potential for it. If it's a hard fought series with the Lightning where he, manages the goaltending correctly and they just lose in 7 or something, I think the seat gets hot, but I don't think it's like fireable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Again, I think it all just comes down to, again, like it's so tough to even quantify within this year, right? Where it just feels like this year is an ultimate bridge year. They've so exceed expectations in that it all comes down to how you view this year. But at the end of the day, if you're still first in the Atlantic, you still got a good team. You still got a window here with guys like Marchand with this goalie rotation in place. You don't want to have it be squandered off of another first round exit if that's the case. So we'll see.
We'll see. We shall see. Playoffs are coming quick. Connor, before you go, what can the people look forward to from you over Poke the Bear and the Boston Globe? Oh, Poke the Bear. What am I saying?
Well, you can find me, Evan. You can find me on right. Poke the Bear with you and all the other esteemed guests we have throughout this season into the off season. You also can find my stuff and read it on Boston.com and the Boston Globe. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. Yeah, Boston Globe, Boston.com. For so many years you get into the habit and
routine.
We do so many things. That's what it comes down to. But anyways, feel better, Connor. Feel better. Drink fluids, saltines, Pepto-Bismol, Gatorade, whatever it takes. And good luck watching BU play Denver. I wish you the best. I wish you the best. By the time people listen to this, there will already be a result, so they'll know what happened. But great win for BU. That's all I'll say. Great win.
We all knew that was going to happen. Hope BC loses.
Called it. Anyways, that's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. We're presented by Prize Picks. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.